Thank you very much, Mr Chair, and to your committee today. I have here with me today Luccio Cercarelli, the Chief Executive Officer of the Department of Chief Minister and Cabinet, Mr Tom Leeming, Deputy CEO, Policy Reform and Regions, and Ms Justine Davis, Deputy CEO, Strategic and Corporate Services. It's an honour to be here today addressing all of you as our first estimates hearing as a new government. 9 months ago, Territorians voted for change for the better. They wanted strong action to reduce crime, rebuild the economy and restore our unique and beautiful Territory lifestyle. The day after the election, I met with the then CEO of the Department of Chief Minister and Cabinet and the Police Commissioner to get them moving on crime being our #1 priority. That resulted in around 60 police back in uniform and back on the streets. Within 2 weeks of the election, we redesigned the Northern Territory public sector, centred around the 3 key priorities of Territorians, with particular focus on smaller and more agile agencies. What we did is build a government ready for action. Within our first 8 weeks, we had delivered our reducing crime laws on urgency through the Parliament, as we promised Territorians we would. Some of these laws included Declan's Law, delivering stronger bail and better powers for police to warn for knives, new ram raid and post and boast laws, nuisance public drinking laws, and minimum mandatory sentencing for assaults on workers. We also took some really simple steps that Labor failed to do, including bus drivers who'd been begging the previous government for protective screens. In just 12 weeks, we had delivered that for every driver on every bus. We moved to make our prosecutors permanent and delivered a much-needed corrections master plan and secured legal aid funding, just to name a few. We also rolled out our school attendance officer program, holding parents accountable and making sure kids are in the classroom. The Circuit Breaker initiative was stood up prior to Christmas and is going really well, with family responsibility agreements holding parents accountable. We made law and order the cornerstone of our first budget, with a record $1.5 billion investment in corrections, courts and police to reset the focus and the budget on what matters most to Territorians. As promised, we're currently conducting an audit of Northern Territory government-funded and externally provided services and programs for children and young people at risk of entering the criminal justice system. The audit supports our priority to reduce youth crime, and it will look at Northern Territory government-funded and administered programs and services, duplication of services, how services can be strengthened, and whether there's appropriate accountability and performance monitoring. In October, we commenced 4 months of consultation on the Territory Coordinator and passed this most significant piece of economic reform in a decade. Payroll tax for small business was abolished from the 1st of January with the lifting of the payroll tax-free threshold. From 1 July, apprentice and trainee wages will also be exempt from that threshold, which I know that plenty of businesses are very excited about. Importantly, through Budget 25-26, we are also removing the commercial and competitive test from payroll tax exemptions that apply to charities and not-for-profits. This means that not-for-profit aged care or childcare providers will no longer have to pay payroll tax. For a non-profit with payroll of $5 million per annum, the entity will save up to $206,250 in payroll tax alone, which then means it's money that can be put back into that aged care or childcare facility, which I'm sure you can imagine will be very meaningful. We always said that we would pull the levers of government to make the Territory a more competitive place to live, work, visit and invest, and it's what we've been doing to deliver action, certainty and security for all Territorians. Other initiatives that we've worked through include removing third-party merit reviews from the Northern Territory Petroleum Planning and Water Acts, the Approvals Fast Track Task Force, which consists of industry representatives providing advice to government around approvals processes. We've very excitedly launched Australia's biggest home owner scheme with the Homegrown and Fresh Start grants, stimulating our construction sector, which was set to hit the worst numbers since records began, but also to have more Territorians into home ownership and build their life here. Status quo is not an option for our government, and it's why we've been delivering that change for the better that Territorians asked for. In March, I launched our Rebuilding the Economy 2025-2028 economic strategy, which provides a framework for the public and private sectors to move forward together. It sets targets that can be measured and are publicly available, giving all Territorians the opportunity to track our progress and get involved. It's a meaningful strategy and it focuses on 5 key areas. First is to be the best place to do business. 2, to build a bigger, better workforce. 3, deliver for Australia. 4, unlock regional growth. And 5, connect the territory. Of course, a strong economy is essential for restoring our unique territory lifestyle, and our work on that priority has begun with really important cost of living measures for Territorians. Those cost of living measures includes no increases in car registration for 12 months, free driver's licences, free meningococcal B vaccines for under 2s and the catch-up program for the adolescents, free swimming lessons for all primary school age students, expanded services at our local pharmacies, the new solar battery grant scheme and 3-year trailer registration. Mr Chair, as a result of the machinery of government changes, the Department of Chief Minister and Cabinet is now a much leaner agency, giving it sharper focus on economic reform and whole-of-government leadership to deliver on our 3 strategic priorities. As at 31 March 2025, CM&C had an FTE of 300.77, including 377, including 38 staff on executive contracts. Prior to the MOG change at 31 March 2024, we had an FTE of 500 and... Sorry, whoever's written this has written it very awkwardly. Anyway, I'll come back to you on our FTE for March, including 62 staff on executive contracts. We decreased by $151.52 million and $241.261 million to $89.741 million as a result of those MOG changes. In the 25-26, CMC will continue to drive cross-government efforts across the 3 strategic pillars. We are one of 5 central agencies in the public service. Our agency provides support and advice to me as Chief Minister, Minister for Defence NT and Minister for Territory Coordinator, and to other ministers. CM&C plays a critical role in leading strategic policy and coordination across government, including in the regions, and driving our agenda with the Commonwealth. Chief Minister and Cabinet coordinates whole-of-government responses to emerging issues and matters of strategic importance to the Northern Territory. It leads positioning of our interests as a state, national, national and international level through strategic reforms, negotiation and engagement with the 3 tiers of government, industry and the community sectors. Through Defence NT, it also advocates the interests of the Territory as a critical defence and national security hub for the Australian Defence Force and our other allied partners. Mr Chair, our government remains laser-focused on the job that we need to do. We're not here to overpromise and underdeliver, as we saw Labor do for many years. We want to bring back that can-do territory spirit and realise the potential which the pioneers before us saw in the Northern Territory. We want the Territory to be a place where everyday Territorians are inspired and empowered to achieve their dreams and aspirations for the future. Before closing, I just want to draw the committee's attention that Chief Minister and Cabinet also reports to the Minister for Aboriginal Affairs, and questioning relating to the Office of the Commissioner for Public Employment should also be directed to the Minister for the Public Service. I'm now very happy to take questions, Mr Chair.
Thank you, Chief Minister. Are there any questions on the opening statement? Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Chair, and thank you, Chief Minister. Chief Minister, I'll just start. We had some written questions, 71, 84, 86 and 87 that were sent to your office on the 8th of April. As you know, it's a 30-day turnaround. That was nearly 2 months ago. My office only received the response and the answers to these questions at 9:15am this morning, the 10th of June 2025, nearly 2 months late. And these questions were pertinent to our work ahead of the estimate session. They particularly related to your agency's Chief Minister, Department of Chief Minister and Cabinet, which we're now in the hearing session for, Territory Coordinator, Police, Fire and Emergency Services. And have you deliberately left this process to this morning to get the answers to the opposition, or has this been an oversight by your office?
Neither opposition, Lena. I think you're probably pretty familiar with this practice. So written questions are normally responded to within 30 days, but obviously the volume of questions that come through in preparation for estimates are significant, and I think has been standard practice for a very long time. I can get the date in which we would have received your questions from opposition, Lena, but I don't think it would be dissimilar.
Thank you, Chief Minister. I'm just hoping that the outstanding questions for every agency don't get received on the day of the hearing to then put the opposition and any of the crossbenchers out in the estimates hearing process. As you know, it's a very well-regarded process for the Northern Territory. It's an important one for Territorians. We want to make sure that we do our jobs, obviously, so you can do your job as well and make sure that no one's left in the dark at the last minute. And so hopefully all of the agencies will provide their answers to the written questions as outline, the ones that are still outstanding, which each agency and minister listening will know which ones are outstanding, and hopefully we don't receive them all each day of the hearing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you to the Chief Minister. In regards to the 2024-25 budget for DCMC, which was 241.2 million with 525 FTE. Your 2025-26 budget has a total of 85.1 million for the department and 293 FTE. Chief Minister, can you please detail what areas or functions have come out of the department and where they have been transferred to?
Yes, I can. Give me a second. Okay. So we decreased from 525 down to 293, which is that reduction of 232 full-time equivalent. So we had some movements, obviously, due to the MOG changes and the transfer of different responsibilities. So we had quite a few functions go to the Department of Housing, Local Government and Community Development. They were Territory Regional Growth, Local Government and Regional Development, Aboriginal Interpreter Service and corporate overheads to go with that. And so it's very deliberate in streamlining the Chief Minister and Cabinet so that they can be really focused on economic reform and that whole of government leadership that we need. And these are better placed in housing, local government and community development. They're a better fit. There were some functions that went out to the Department of Trade, Business and Asian Relations, investment attraction being one of them, Local Jobs Fund, and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Art Gallery was another one. We had some functions transferred to the Department of Mining and Energy, which was mining development. You can see by the list that CMC used to have a real mix of responsibilities. So we had some transfers out to the Department of Tourism and Hospitality. That included Activate Territory and Darwin Waterfront. From the transfers out to the Department of People, Sport and Culture, we had Veterans Support. For health, the transfer across was Northern Territory Remote Aboriginal Investment and Remote Community Stores and Alcohol Policy. Transferring to Attorney General's was Liquor Commission. For the former Department of Industry, Trade and Tourism, oh no, that's fine. And then a new function, of course, is the Office of Territory Coordinator.
Thank you, Chief Minister. And can you confirm of the 232 FTEs with the redeployment of other agencies which you've just outlined? Thank you very much for the committee. That all 232 positions still remain, or have they been downscaled or cut out?
No, yep, they're all still there. They just transferred across to their new home agency.
Thank you, Chief Minister. And what internal restructuring has occurred within the department with all of the changes?
Sorry, what do you mean?
Now that there are changes to the structure of the department in terms of, you said, you know, a leaner, meaner machine type of approach, what internally has changed in terms of your operational organisation chart?
Yeah, so obviously the ones that I've just listed are now undertaking those roles in their new home agency, and our agency is focusing on that strategic coordination and support, regional development, territory coordinator, defence NT, and all of those economic focuses.
Thank you. Chief Minister, have your machinery of government changes now been fully bedded down in 10 months' worth of governing?
Yes, they have.
Thank you. And what change management processes, if any, have been followed throughout the machinery of government changes?
I'll probably pass to Luccio for that.
Thank you, Chief Minister. A change management plan was fully implemented with the machinery of government changes, which included consultation with staff, advising staff of their movements to other agencies. Each agency then put into place their change management plans to embed the new functions coming in, as well as to inform existing staff of the changes that have occurred. That consultation also included any movements of staff to new buildings and locations. So a full consultation and change management plan was in place throughout the period of the MOG.
Thank you. And Chief Minister, throughout that process, was there feedback that was received by staff around the changes, and was there anything that was unable to be implemented through the change management process?
Certainly not that I'm aware of. It went pretty smoothly by all accounts. There was some significant changes. We really wanted much smaller, more agile agencies and really clear lines of decision making, particularly, having where we could one agency, one minister, and then also really focusing on those economic agencies, given one of our three key priorities was not just about reducing crime, but also about rebuilding the economy. So we really looked at how do we support agencies to really focus in on their key areas of expertise. We really want agencies to be able to do their area really well, and we saw the structure under the previous government as spreading everyone very thin and not allowing for that real development and focus of expertise. So by splitting up those economic agencies in particular, we really are then allowing those agencies to work through their strengths and getting their people able to really have a very in-depth understanding of what it is we can do to move the territory forward, given that's such a significant priority for us.
Thank you. And Chief Minister, is there a costing to what the significant machinery of government changes is, and are you able to outline that to the committee?
I don't have that.
Could we
Would
ask
you
that
like
on
that?
notice,
Yep.
please, Mr Chair?
Leader of the Opposition, please restate the question for the record.
Thank you. Chief Minister, given there are significant machinery of government changes, can you please outline to the committee the cost of these changes?
Minister, do you accept the question?
I do.
The question asked by the Leader of the Opposition of the Chief Minister has been allocated the number 1.14. Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Chief Minister, how many people are on executive contracts in the Department of Chief Minister and Cabinet? And can you please break down those by the number per ECO and what their levels are?
Yes, thank you, Opposition Leader. So that is in the answers to written questions that we provided you this morning, but I'm very happy to go through it. So the number of executive contracts is 34, broken down into 5 ECO6, 1 ECO5, 2 ECO4, 5 ECO3, 11 ECO2 and 10 ECO1. And we have 4 part-time as well.
Thank you. Chief Minister, how many of those ECOs sit in your ministerial office?
No, they're from the department.
Thank you. And has the department, does the department have information around the number of consultancies that have been used in 2024 to 2025?
Opposition Leader, that would be 3.
Thank you, Chief Minister. And how much department spending has been on these 3 consultancies?
That's 167,187.
Thank you. And Chief Minister, just a breakdown, these consultancies being 3, were any single ones above the amount of $50,000 individually?
Yes, all 3 were Opposition Leader.
Thank you. Chief Minister, how many staff are dedicated to internal and external communications in the department? And are you able to provide the committee with a breakdown of the costs for communications staff and their activities that they are undertaking?
Opposition Leader, just while we're waiting for that, I just want to confirm that you were actually provided the written questions at 5 o'clock yesterday as per previous convention when you were in government, but you also asked the estimates questions twice. So we provided it to you twice, which is unusual. And that cost agencies across government over $400,000 in costed hours to collate.
It's probably because we didn't get the answers in the first place. Thank you, Chief Minister.
Well, that is not the case. You just asked them twice, one at the end of last year and one now. So just in answer to your question, it's 16.3 FTE.
And Chief Minister, the second part of that question was, what are the activities that these staff in the communications, external and internal, their activities, what are they undertaking?
Yep, I'll pass over to Ms Doherty.
Thank you very much, Leader of the Opposition. So the Strategic Communications and Engagement Team in the Department of the Chief Minister and Cabinet undertakes a range of strategic communications and engagement services, including but not limited to community consultation, engagement, design and development of cross-government and public consultation surveys and sessions for the community in relation to government policy. They also undertake protocol services on behalf of the government and ministers and Leader of the Opposition, as well as design of digital and marketing and communications services. They also provide a governance role in terms of cross-agency communications and provide assurances around things like sponsorship across government, cross-agency coordination of various communications and engagement proposals and policy reforms which relate to strategic communications, and provide chairing of a communications review subcommittee which provides cross-agency coordination on those types of functions, as well as things like the public information rules and other contemporary communications practices, both for the Northern Territory but also what is happening nationally.
Thank you, Ms Doherty. And we heard from the Auditor General earlier this morning in regards to some of the reports that he made in his statutory office around the contraventions of the Public Information Act. Has there been work by the department done to ensure that it is in line with the Public Information Act and that public spending is not political spending?
Yep, Ms Doherty will answer that.
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. I can confirm that as a result of the various reports that have been released in the last year by the Auditor General, that the existing guidelines for the application of the Public Information Act, which are socialised and shared amongst the various communications teams across government are in the process of being updated to reflect those contemporary interpretations by the Auditor General.
Thank you, Ms Doherty. And are there any repercussions within the department for contravening the Public Information Act through the communications team?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. There were no recommendations as a result of the report into the Territory Coordinator advertisement directed at the department. The advertisements in question had already been finalised when the report was released. However, notwithstanding, the department is actively working to progress the updated guidelines, as I mentioned, which should bring our advice into contemporary best practice across government. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Doherty. And with the number 15.3 FTE in regards to the comms team within the department, how does that compare to the previous budget and year in terms of FTE?
It was 16.3.
Thank you, Chief Minister. Chief Minister, you have a commitment to cutting all approval timeframes across government by 50%. Can you please provide the committee with a breakdown of all approvals and their timeframes for 2023-24 and 24 and 25?
Yeah, so this is a very ambitious but important target, and it's sort of an overarching ambition across whole of government. So it's something we talk a lot to our CEOs about, and it's something that we use as a goal in which to drive change. I think I mentioned in my opening statement, Opposition Leader, about status quo not being an option. And in our 2025-28 Rebuilding the Territory Economic Strategy, we're really excited about making the Territory the best place to do business. It's our number one goal in that entire economic strategy. And to do that, we know that making it easier to do business is a really important part. So I went through some of the ways in which we've done that, which includes changes at the motor vehicle registry. So, for example, moving trailer registrations from 1 year to 3 years is a significant reduction in approval timeframes. The Territory Coordinator obviously then has very specific and set powers should the need arise to be able to expedite timeframes should the process be required. Third-party merits review, there's been a wide range of measures, including the work we're doing around pharmacy's scope of practice and a number of things. So it's from really what people might consider big issues to small issues. I don't like to categorise it that way. But for what we're trying to do is reduce people's unnecessary interface with government. The Approvals Fast Track Task Force was undertaking a lot of this consideration as well around, how do we measure risk, for example, as a territory, and what do we need and not need in order to be able to continue to function in the most efficient way whilst protecting, whatever it might be, depending on the type of regulatory process. So that's, I guess, the high level so I probably don't have a percentage for you. It's really an overarching target that drives all of us every day to deliver that change. Like I said, no matter how small, I think I use MVR a lot, and I feel bad for the people at MVR because they do an amazing job. But as you know, Opposition Leader, it's one of those places that people, do not like to go and line up and have to do various things. So working through some of those right through to the very significant pieces of regulation for businesses, payroll tax is another one, for example.
Thank you, Chief Minister. And whilst I'm sure there's some internal tracking of the progress around the 50% reduction of timeframes and approvals for government, will there be some outward-facing comms that would then provide essentially an update to the public for each and every agency to see where they're tracking with that 50% target of approvals and fast tracking, and where would people be able to find that if it is already available? If it's not, when would it be available?
It's not available at the moment, Opposition Leader, but I can assure you as we move, I think it's fair to say it's been a very, very busy 9 or 10 months. We've obviously been undertaking a lot of change, reorganising whole of government through the MOG changes, focusing on legislative reform, community safety, delivering a budget, all of these types of things. So plenty of work has been done, but as that starts to consolidate, then we'll certainly be the first ones to loudly and proudly shout the numbers from the rooftop, Opposition Leader, and we can look at ways to make that more consistent going forward. But at this stage, it's very much part of what drives us every day.
Thank you, Chief Minister. Yeah, it would be great to see something that was a public, outward-facing database, essentially, so people can see all of the examples of the timeframes and how they have or haven't been fast-tracked. Through the chair, my next question, Chief Minister, there's around $1 million set aside for the NT-RAY service evaluation monitoring reform, and will your department be undertaking this work?
Yep, that's part of what the agency does.
Thank you. And Chief Minister, will it be done in conjunction with the Aboriginal Peaks of the Northern Territory?
Yes.
Thank you. Chief Minister, how will this support improved outcomes, particularly in terms of ensuring the additional NT-RAY investment negotiated by the former Labor government is invested in the Northern Territory in the proper way?
Yeah, we obviously re-signed that up. I think that was earlier this year, or I think it was earlier this year. Yeah, February, was it? Yeah, that's right. And I went down to Alice Springs and met with the Prime Minister and the member for Lingiari and others who are there, obviously, for that. It's a significant portion of funding. And for some of those more details, I'll pass over to Mr. Leeming.
Thank you, Chief Minister. Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. The allocation we got under the NT-RAY for this department over 6 years was $7.66 million over the 6 years to coordinate the monitoring, evaluation, accountability and learning aspects of the NT-RAY, so that all of the elements of the $842.6 million being spent over those 6 years across the various parties to the agreement, that we are tracking those, that we're monitoring those, we're evaluating it, we're holding each other accountable, and we're learning in how we implement those various programs about how to improve based on experience. It is very much being the monitoring, evaluation, accountability and learning framework is very much being developed and will be implemented consistent with the partnership agreement that the Chief Minister signed in February. And that means it is being discussed through the Joint Standing Committee on NT-RAY, which includes our partners from Aboriginal Peak Organisations, NT and the Commonwealth Government. In fact, I'm chairing a meeting of that tomorrow to discuss this very issue, how the monitoring, evaluation, accountability and learning framework will be designed. So the funding allocation we have for that, the $7.66 million over 6 years, will coordinate all that monitoring, evaluation, accountability and learning effort. It will also be incumbent on each of the various parties funded to provide program delivery on the ground, including but not limited to NT government agencies, to integrate monitoring, evaluation, accountability and learning into the way they implement those programs.
Thank you, Mr. Leeming. And just on that $6 million over 3 years, will that be an equal split of $2 million per year for the next 3 years, or will it depend on the activities for the implementation and the evaluation and the monitoring of the NT-RAY?
Yeah,
so the total allocation for the Department of Chief Minister and Cabinet to coordinate monitoring, evaluation, accountability and learning is $7.66 million over the 6 years of the agreement, and it is mostly evenly spaced across the 6 years. So it's except for there is a one-off external evaluation in the 3rd and 6th years for which $500,000 has been allocated. So I can tell you the exact numbers. It's $1.05 million in 25-26, $1.076 million in 26-27. That jumps up to $1.598 million in 27-28 because we're funding a one-off mid-year, a mid-agreement external evaluation. Then it drops back down to $1.2 1.121 million in 28-29, 1.144 million in 2029-30, and then it jumps back up again because we're doing an end of agreement evaluation, external evaluation, to 1.671 in the last year of the agreement, 2030-31.
All right. I'll now open to the floor. Member for Fanny Bay.
Thank you, Chair. Laurie Zio, member for Fanny Bay. My question is specifically around reducing red tape and public sector reform. So, as I sort of have spoken about in my maiden speech in Parliament, I'm very keen to see the reduction of red tape across government and frontline services. I'm wondering if the Department of Chief Minister and Cabinet are leading any reform in that space to reduce red tape and the administrative burden that goes along with a lot of our frontline services like police, health, teaching.
Thank you, Member for Fanny Bay. I think what's really important is as much as structural change to the way in which we've done the machinery of government changes, we're on this cultural reform journey as well. And so we're really trying to empower public servants to take ownership of their patch and really push up and drive through those reforms. And so it's not just, you mentioned police, which is a really good example. When I'm out on the front line, I'm asking them 1,000 questions. Well, how could, explain this process to me and how could that process be made better? And so I know within police, they're really encouraging police to come forward with law reform or whatever it might be to help support better justice outcomes. And that's the same across the whole of government. So we're really asking agencies and every level of public servant to, just because we've done something for 20 years doesn't mean that's the best way to do it. How can we make things more efficient? Do we still need that process? Has something else come in its place, which means, maybe 10 years ago it was really important, but it's not as important anymore. And to really make sure that leadership within the public service are understanding all of those efficiencies. Because as I said earlier, in the response to the Leader of the Opposition, around the 50% reduction in approval timeframes, it can be the smallest thing. It could be a 5-page form that we now turn into a 2-page form. Now, for the person filling out the form, that gives them more of their time back. And we want to be really respectful to Territorians about how that interface with government looks, particularly people who are, running businesses, and the less touch points they have to have that don't really result in any outcome, the better. So there's a lot of work being done, including the Approvals Fast Track Task Force, and a lot of legislation already done, but we continue to encourage everyone at every opportunity we get. And I might pass on to Luccio, but I know it's something we talk to the CEs a lot about in really saying to them, what is it that we can do differently? How can we challenge the status quo and do things better, and why? So I don't know, Luccio, if you had anything to add to that.
Thank you, Chief Minister, and thank you, Deputy Chair, Member for Fanny Bay. Just to reinforce what the Chief Minister has said, agencies and CEs have been asked to look at day-to-day business and how we can simplify processes for the community and restore the economy, lifestyle, and reduce crime. It's about making things easier, not harder. It's about looking at what we're doing and whether it's still valid in today's environment, whether it's the current policy of the government, and how do we move that forward in a smooth transition. So all agencies are committed to working on this. The MOG resulted in more agencies, but focused agencies, which allows each agency and each of its CEOs to work with the Minister and with their relevant stakeholders to look at the processes that are in place and how we can streamline them. This is a large task. This is decades of inbuilt culture and processes and behaviour that are being looked at. So, but every step that we make forward is a step of improving for Northern Territorians on how we can make life easier and better and improve processes for them. So we are committed to that process. And as the Chief Executive of Chief Min Cabinet, it's something that I look at on a daily basis and have various discussions with CEs of agencies. And further to the Chief's point, it is about empowering staff. Within my agency, we've increased presence in regional Northern Territory. We've empowered the staff in the regions, which is important. It's not just about having people on the ground. It's about having people that have the ability to make decisions on the ground based on local knowledge and input. So there are moves afoot, but it is a journey.
Just one final point to add to that. It's also about, job satisfaction for our public service as well. And so I think it's giving them the opportunity to sort of, call out things that, don't necessarily add any value to the territory or to a particular process, and then have ownership of it and feel like they've really been part of making a difference as well. So, when you're spending your day doing something that you think isn't necessary, if we can remove that from someone's daily life and they're doing things that they do believe is necessary, you immediately have, that improved engagement and that job satisfaction, which is really important.
Member for Karama.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of clarification questions very quickly. Defence NT, which output should I ask that on, please? And also the fast track approvals task force, which output?
Yep, Territory Coordinator, Defence NT, 11.1.
Yep.
And 11.2 for approvals fast track.
11.2, okay. And then I think this goes back, next question was touched on by Deputy Chief Executive Doherty. This is about the marketing comms, which the Leader of the Opposition referred to. Can you tell me how much did the Boundless Possible campaign cost? And are we still pursuing that, or is this part of our cost savings?
It's part of a lot of things, Member for Karama. No, Boundless Possible is gone. I think from time to time we still find a sign or something around the place, and obviously then we are able to respond accordingly. I don't know if I'll just seek some advice if we have a figure for that. Yeah, so the previous government allocated $1.1 million annually to Boundless Possible.
Annually?
If you can believe that. On top of the, gosh, you're stretching my memory, but we had the rockets going into space, and we had sign wrap on construction sites and all sorts of stuff. So we've been able to then identify that $1.1 million as part of the $20 million agency savings.
Excellent, thank you.
We will break in a few minutes, but we've got 3 minutes for questions. Member for Johnston.
Thank you. I've got a question from the member for Mulka under Defence, so thank you for that question, Member for Karama. Can you advise of any defence discussions or plans in relation to the Gove region? Previously, there's been discussion about defence use of Rio Tinto assets and local discussion about defence use of the Gove port. Sorry, that's the end of my question.
No, not to my knowledge.
Okay, so there, to your knowledge, there are no discussions or plans in place?
No, but that obviously Defence NT is quite different to the federal responsibility for defence. So it's we wouldn't necessarily know. So I would also encourage the member for Mulka to speak to the federal government about that, because I couldn't rule it in or out. It's just not to my knowledge.
Okay. And can I just ask one short, through the chair, one short follow-up question just in relation to consultancies? Are you able to advise which external companies consultancies were awarded to, have been awarded to?
I certainly can, Member for Johnston. So it was Kent Australia Pty Limited, ACI Allen Consulting, and the University of Queensland.
Thank you. And is that's in relation to the changes, the MOG changes, or more broadly? That's in relation to the MOG changes, or more broadly?
They were the three that the opposition leader asked me about.
Okay. Are you able to outline what other external agencies, consultancies have been awarded to?
I'll just pass on to Ms Doherty.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Member for Johnston. In relation to the companies listed by the Chief Minister, Kent Australia was contracted or awarded, I should say, to provide a consultancy for process modelling for glycol implications in the NT gas transmission pipeline system. ACIL Allen was contracted to provide or develop, I should say, a Northern Territory countering violent extremism strategy.
Sorry, through the chair, I think Perhaps my question wasn't clear. Not what did those consultancies undertake, but what other consultancies outside those three, more broadly, have been, what other companies or agencies have consultancies been awarded to? Contracts, sorry. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, a member for Johnston. Can you clarify the question? There are a number of small value tier 1 consultancies that are awarded throughout the year for things like stationery invoicing and so on. I just want to make sure I've got the parameters correct.
I'd be interested in all of them. I'm happy to take it on notice.
Okay, they were provided in the global questions
Okay,
this
great.
morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we will now break. The time now is 1 p.m. We will reconvene at 1:30 p.m. And we will reconvene. We are still taking questions on the opening statement. Are there any further questions?
Mr Chair, sorry, just before we start, I've got an answer to a question taken on notice.
Yep.
Would that be okay?
Yes. Just sorry, Chief Minister, if you could, do you know the number it is?
Yes, it was 1.14.
Thank you, Chief Minister.
The opposition leader asked about the cost of the machinery of government changes. The Treasurer issued a direction and noted that the changes or transfer in functions did not result in any additional cost to government, so it was cost neutral. It all came from within. And so that answers our component, but the opposition leader is more than welcome to ask the Treasurer any further questions about that, but there was no... every agency was able to absorb it from within.
Thank you, Chief Minister. I'll now hand over to Member for Nightcliff.
Thank you, Chair. These next questions, I believe this is the best place to ask them. Let me know if there's somewhere else, but I don't believe there is another place to ask these in terms of outputs. It's around the removal of the Climate Change Portfolio Ministry and around just questions on the existence of the Office of Climate Change. My question through the Chair to the Chief Minister: does the CLP government accept science on anthropogenic climate change and the risks that climate change pose to the Northern Territory?
Sorry, that's your question?
That's my
Yes.
question, yeah.
Yes, we do.
Oh, you do? Okay. So that accepts that climate change is a risk to people's livelihoods?
Well, we know that climate change is real, that it's an issue that we need to be cognizant of and mindful of in policy development and in our decision making. So to that extent.
Yes. Okay. And also, does the CLP government accept that it's a risk to the Territory's economy?
Well, I think it's something that we are really conscious of. Equally, when you talk about risk, there's opportunity as well. So I think we're probably coming at it from slightly different angle to you, Member for Nightcliff, but certainly, we acknowledge that it is something that successive governments over many decades have had and will continue to have to manage through public policy.
Okay, thank you. And so can you confirm, has the CLP government then acts the Office of Climate Change? Or is that just still existence?
Yeah, that's never been in this agency. So you could ask the Environment Minister.
Okay. So there's no one under your ministry or agency, sorry, or any section of the department that's responsible for overseeing mitigation or response to climate change?
Correct.
None. Okay. Why is that, given that you acknowledge the risks?
Because environmental matters are best dealt with by the Environment Minister, the Environment Agency. They are the ones who have all interfaces across whole of government, so they're best placed to be leading and advising in that space.
Okay. But was the decision, the previous ministry, there was a Minister for Climate Change, would that decision to remove that have been under your responsibility?
Yeah, so my understanding is it was never with Department of Chief Minister and Cabinet. The previous government did have a Minister for Climate Change. We do not have a Minister for Climate Change as a portfolio title, but that doesn't mean that climate change isn't a responsibility of the Environment Minister. That would sit with him.
Okay. And Chief Minister, are you aware that the top end has had its latest monsoon on record, and that Mbantu Alice Springs has had its hottest 100 days ever, with nearly 3.5 months above average maximum temperatures of 40 degrees?
I knew about the wet season. I didn't realise about Central Australia, but certainly, yes.
Thank you. And just a final one. According to the Federal Department of Climate Change, Energy and Environment, state and territory governments have the following responsibilities: to deliver adaptation responses in their areas of policy and regulation. This includes service delivery and infrastructure, provide local regional science and information through collaboration with all governments, work with the Australian government to implement national adaptation priorities, monitoring and evaluation arrangements, and encouraging climate resilience and adaptive capacity. Are you meeting these obligations and keeping these considerations through your government's policy approach?
So without speaking for the Environment Minister, and again, I definitely encourage you to ask during that portfolio, but there's a number of things that ministers are a part of, and I imagine, I don't know because obviously I'm not the portfolio minister, but there are the federal government has a lot of different ministerial councils that meet as a collective, as a federation on a number of issues. I'm sure there would be an Environment Minister's meeting that takes place, and so that would be where I imagine those high-level sort of Australia-wide targets are discussed. But I would encourage you to speak to the portfolio minister.
Yeah, and thank you. I will be. I'm just aware that there is no actual minister of climate change anymore.
Well, it's not exactly true. It's just not called that. So there is a minister for environment, and that comes under it.
Comes under that. Okay, thank you. I also have questions on another topic, but I'm happy to be pointed towards an output. I believe there was an output, maybe previously it's been removed on the lobbyist register.
If you'd like to, excuse me, you could pose the question and ask which output it's best suited under.
Well, I have a line of questions around the lobbyist register, if that would be appropriate now. Okay.
Go for it.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, my question to the Chief Minister. There's been a lot of discussion around for decades around NT with the issues with lobbyists and issues around perhaps influencing policy decisions. That in December 2023, you stated, quote, that currently in the Territory there is no official lobbyist register of which the community can keep track of how many times government ministers are meeting with lobbyists and what lobbyists are working in the Territory. We see this as a major missing integrity piece in the Labor government, end quote. Despite this, the lobbyist register that your government introduced in February does not include any mechanism for the community to keep track of what ministers lobbyists are meeting with or how frequently. Do you therefore think this continues to be a major missing integrity piece in the NT?
Thank you very much for your question, Member for Nightcliff. So we are the first government to put in place a lobbyist register, and, you know, I appreciate it might not be where you want it to be, and I know you've been very, very vocal about it, but that's not to take away from the fact that Labor refused to do it, and the CLP moved very, very quickly to introduce that. I think was it earlier this year, February this year. There is a public component to it. I believe it's on the website. Correct. Yeah, on the DCM website, on the Department of Chief Minister and Cabinet website, and so lobbyists can register themselves. That all gets uploaded, and so people can see in real time people who are on the lobbyist register.
Thank you. Yes, I understand the website and that they can see who has registered themselves as lobbyists, but they can't see who is meeting with what ministers and how frequently. Does the government not think that Territorians are entitled to know who may be influencing decisions through having a real functional register that publishes who the ministers are meeting with?
Well, that's a policy position that we took to establish the register how we have, and as I said earlier, I appreciate that's you know, it's not where you'd like it to be. We do have 15 registrations on that online format, and what it does is it gives that transparency component, that opportunity to understand who lobbyists are when meeting with them, and so. Yes, again, I know, and you've been very vocal about this, that it doesn't land where you would have liked it to land, but it is something we've brought in for the very first time as part of a suite of measures.
Thank you, Chief Minister. And I mean, it's not just about sort of where I would like it to land. I was referring to your previous quote where you spoke about having transparency around ministers meeting with lobbyists. So that's sort of why I was getting to that question. So why in this lobbyist register did you decide to only include third-party lobbyists instead of all lobbyists?
Well, we looked at different models around the country. Ultimately, it's about understanding an angle people might be approaching government on. So, for example, if you are the head of, I don't know, the Chamber of Commerce, it's very obvious you're there to represent business, right? So your interactions with a government minister or with government on that basis, and it's a member-based organisation, so it has that buy-in, I suppose you could say, as opposed to third parties as defined by our policy. Okay.
So are you sort of saying then, sorry, that the purpose of the lobbyist register is for the ministers to, saying if it's the head of Chamber of Commerce, they already know who that is, that the purpose of the lobbyist register is for ministers to know who they're meeting with, hence having third-party lobbyists registered?
Yeah, so if someone's being paid to push a particular position, it then gives ministers the opportunity to understand that transparently.
Okay, but is not also does the government not believe then that part of the purpose of a lobbyist register is for the public to know who the ministers are meeting with?
Well, as I said, Member for Nightcliff, that's not the policy decision we took.
Okay, thank you. May I ask Chief Minister, through the Chair, why your government did not include any enforceable code of conduct or financial penalties for breaches like there are in other states and territories?
There is a breach. You can then be deregistered from the register, so there is a tangible outcome.
Oh, yes, but no financial penalties?
No.
What was can I ask what the reason for that was?
Well, that's just the policy position we took. Again, there's different ways to do it around the country or not at all, and we opted with moving forward with the register that we put together earlier this year.
Okay. Do you agree that as elected representatives we are mandated to make decisions in the best interest of the public and not just the best interests of corporations and business and lobbyists?
Of course, we're here to represent Territorians, and I know my team and we wake up every single day with the sole focus and drive of making the Territory a better place. I mean, we've all watched under 8 years of Labor, the Territory we know and love slip away from us. We've seen crime spiral out of control, our economy flatline. We've seen people we know leave, long-term generational families pack up and go because they don't see a future for themselves or for their children here anymore. And that's a devastating outcome for the Territory. It's a beautiful place. It's a special and unique place. And we certainly feel, Boundless Possible got raised earlier. We certainly feel that under the previous Labor government, they were trying to make the Territory something that we aren't, almost ashamed to be Territorian. And that's something we're working really hard to build back. We think we should be proud of being different. It's one of our competitive edges. It's a distinct advantage, we believe, on what the Territory has to offer. And we're doing a lot of work to reposition the Territory around the country as being seen as able to solve a lot of this nation's problems. And so we are really saying as loudly as we can that the Territory is here, whether it's through onshore gas or our defence strategic location or our mineral resources or whatever else it might be. We are a small population over an extremely large landmass, but what we have is an abundance of wealth and richness and unique offerings that are unrivaled by anywhere else in this country.
Thank you, Chief Minister. And just to go back to the start of your answer, which I think answered mine, that we are mandated to make decisions in the best interest of the public. On that, how can Territorians be sure that these decisions that we're making are made to benefit them when the CLP government hasn't included the transparent element within the lobbyist register around letting them access information on who and when they are accessing ministers?
Well, I disagree with you, Member for Nightcliff. I think this is a huge step forward, something, again, I said Labor refused to do. So this hasn't happened before. We're very proud to have delivered it and very quickly delivered it as part of a range of transparency measures that we increased, whether it be in the Parliament or elsewhere. And so we're moving forward and making sure that we're really focused on the key areas that Territorians asked us to focus on.
Thank you.
Are there any more questions on the opening statement? Okay, the committee will now proceed to consider the estimates of proposed expenditure contained in the Appropriation Bill 2526 as they relate to the Department of Chief Minister and Cabinet. Are there any agency-related whole-of-government questions on budget and fiscal strategies?
Excuse me, Chair. I had a question for the member for Mooka at 11.3. We're not there yet.
We're not there yet.
Okay, thank you. Oh, so, yeah.
Yeah, so we're just about to go into 11.1, member for Johnston. So I'll repeat that last question. Are there any agency-related whole-of-government questions on budget and fiscal strategies?
Yes, Mr Chair.
Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you. Chief Minister, what has been the cost to taxpayers of executive contract termination since August 2024?
We won't be able to provide that breakdown, Opposition Leader, due to confidentiality.
Thank you, Chief Minister. But in terms of the budget and looking at the advice and coordination output for your agency, there's obviously a variance in what was revised to the actual budget there before us in the budget papers. So is any of that cost then absorbed by the agency as opposed to what we may expect for next year's budget?
Could you try explain the question again, Opposition Leader?
So the cost to taxpayers, Chief Minister, for executive contract terminations since you came to government in August 2024, how much has it cost the taxpayer to terminate chief executive officers in your government, under your government?
Probably better asked of DCDD, Opposition Leader.
Thank you, Chief Minister. Similarly, but hopefully you can answer this one. How many chief executive officers have had their contracts terminated since coming to government in August 2024?
Oh. I'll pass on to Mr Cercarelli.
Thank you, Leader for the Opposition and Chief Minister. There has been one termination of a contract in my time as CMC CEO. In relation to anything beyond that, it would be a question best directed to the Department of Corporate and...
Thank you. And further to that, did the expense of this one termination of the CEO come out of the department's budget, or did it come out of the overall C&C budget?
Again, thank you for the question. And on behalf of the Chief Minister, it comes out from the relevant agency as a payment.
Thank you. And in terms of the cost, financial cost, Chief Minister, to the Northern Territory Government for former Commissioner Murphy's separation in NT Police, including contractual termination, payment, legal fees and settlement costs, what were they to the taxpayer?
Yes, so that question is better asked of DCDD.
Let's hope DCD get on to the estimates hearing this fortnight. In regards to the legal dispute or mediation process, where is that up to in regards to the Police Commissioner Murphy's case, Chief Minister?
As I've said, that's best, matters around the dollar figure are best for DCDD.
Thank you, Chief Minister. Obviously, this is an important aspect that Territory taxpayers would like to know, so I will make sure that those questions are asked to that agency and hopefully they'll be able to provide that information in the best interest of time, Mr Chair. Well, I'm happy to move on, obviously, to other committee members and make sure that we can get through some of the outputs.
Thank you, Leader for Opposition. Are there any more whole-of-government questions on budget and fiscal strategies? That concludes consideration of agency-related whole-of-government questions on budget and fiscal strategies. The committee will now proceed to Output Group 11, Advice and Coordination, Output 11.1, Strategic Advice and Coordination. Are there any questions?
Yes, Mr Chair.
I'll start with Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you. Chief Minister, can you explain what's been cut here?
Leader of the Opposition, could you give more detail for that question, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr Chair. The revised budget was 8.6 million and the new budget under the CLP government is 5 million. So what has been cut, an estimated 3.6 million from this particular output.
Yes, thank you, Opposition Leader. So what that change in funding represents is the expiration of time-limited Commonwealth funding, but negotiations are currently underway. It's just the way the timing lines up, really. So we would expect that to be negotiated and delivered and top that back up. It's expired right now, so we have to reflect that in the budget.
Thank you, Chief Minister. Are you able to say which of those either policies or grants are the ones that are affected under that $3 million decrease?
Yes, it is the Disaster Risk Reduction National Partnership Agreement, the Living Safe Together Intervention Program Expansion Federal Funding Agreement, and the Counter Violent Extremism High Risk Rehabilitation and Reintegration Program Federal Funding Agreement.
Thank you. And Chair, with your indulgence, and Chief Minister, I know we've got a question later on in one of your other portfolios for anti-fire and emergency services around that disaster funds and the enhancing emergency management. Would it be better asked in that output?
Yes. Yep. Happy to.
Member for Karama.
Thank you, Chair. Chief Minister, as I said at the start, I'm very interested in defence and Defence NT. It's certainly an important sector for Australia and the Northern Territory, not only from a security perspective but also an economic perspective. And it's not only Australian Defence Forces, but we're also talking about their allies and so on. So what I'd like to know, Chief Minister, is can you just quickly restate what is the role of Defence NT and what achievements or initiatives have they already undertaken or plan to undertake in the near future to help advance the benefit of the Territory?
Thank you very much, Member for Karama. And yes, defence is very, very important. So as part of our 5 pillars of economic focus for the Northern Territory, defence is one of them. It represents 9% of the Territory's gross state product, so it is significant. But we believe that this is sort of funding that's come to the or investment that's come to the Territory naturally, in terms of we are a very obvious location to increase defence spend due to our proximity in the region. What we're really trying to establish for Defence NT is a much stronger presence, and much stronger partnership with the federal government as well. And so we believe there's more gains to be made, and particularly for local contractors. So a lot of work has been done over probably a bit more than a decade, particularly between master builders and successive Northern Territory governments, around breaking down contracts and making sure that it's able to be delivered by local providers. We've also had the Marine Rotational Force now for 12 years. So those are some of the things that are working really well, but need constant vigilance on. The federal government, or the Australian Defence Force as well, we've seen some movement in military units, and that's something we're really focused on. We believe that there should be more boots on the ground, as well as greater investment in infrastructure. And that continues to be an important advocacy piece for us, as well as showing really tangibly why the Territory is a great place to live. And that feeds back into all of our other areas of focus, including reducing crime, restoring our lifestyle, those types of issues. So really, for us, we want to make the most of any additional investment that Defence are making. We want to really as well position ourselves as being a key partner to our allies. So we have a tried and tested partnership and relationship with the United States Marines, and that's been fantastic. And then late last year, I think it was about November we had the Japanese Defence Minister come to Darwin as part of a trilateral meeting, and that resulted in a commitment of sorts to have the Japanese Self-Defence Force rotate through the territory. So we're really keen to establish ourselves with our Japanese allied partners as being a really fantastic place to train, somewhere that they see value in for their people. So that's a bit of the work that we're doing right now, and just making sure that we have the right intelligence to be able to put, territory businesses front and centre. So we run lots of we just had the Defence Summit recently. Our team go out to all of the national summits as well. And in fact, globally, we've had people in Hawaii, I think a couple of times since coming to government, because the marine, or the focus for our region, is governed out of Hawaii. So there's plenty of work being done across the board, but it really is a very strong focus for us, which is why it's in Chief Minister and Cabinet.
Thank you. And I certainly support the work to get local contracts for defences for local business. Just then very quickly, what's the budget allocation and staffing for Defence NT within the Department of the Chief Minister?
Thank you, Member for Karama. Oh. The budget for Defence NT is $1.9 million, and they have a FTE of 4.6.
Thanks very much. No further questions.
I'll just a follow-up question, and it's probably best for Chief Executive Officer. Of those 4.6, do you know how many are veterans or have previously served with the ADF?
Thank you for the question, Chair and Member for 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙬𝙎. I understand it's not a requirement to identify specifically, but I believe that 3, and we're in the process of trying to recruit, of which having former defence experience is considered a part of the skill set that we're looking for, an understanding of the industry that we're trying to work with. So that we don't actually keep a statistic. You don't have to identify as a former serving veteran. So I can only speculate on the information I have.
No, thank you. That's it's good to hear. Are there any further questions from the committee? Okay, that concludes consideration of output 11.1. We'll now move on to output 11.2, strategic policy, reform and Aboriginal partnerships. I note that the Minister for Aboriginal Affairs is responsible for Aboriginal Affairs policy and coordination, and will respond to questions on this component when he appears before the committee next Tuesday. Are there any questions? Member for Karama.
Thank you. Chief Minister, just very quickly, you mentioned the Fast Track Approvals Task Force. Can you give us an idea of what consultation process they're undertaking and who they're talking to, and when are we likely to get a report from them? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Member for Karama. Yeah, the Approvals Fast Track Task Force was one of our key election commitments alongside the Territory Coordinator. It's something we also took to the 2020 election, like the Territory Coordinator. And what we specifically did with this task force is make sure that it was made up of industry representatives. We didn't want it to be government-led or government control. We really wanted to give the freedom and the opportunity to the private sector to sort of, tell us what it's like being them. And we're really embarking on this this cultural reform I talked about earlier as well, of not just empowering public servants, but really making sure that public servants are aware and cognizant of how they can make the Territory a better place by making sure we're making those interactions as seamless as possible. So Mark Garraway was the chair. We had Rebecca Bullen, Michael Buckley, Andrew Dalglish, Stuart Kenny, Jimenez Lowe, Dan Richards and Tony Smith made up the Approvals Fast Track Task Force. They met 8 times since they were held their first meeting back in November last year. And then they put together some subcommittees and did various amounts of work. So I know they met with a range of different businesses and industry groups. They also met with many of the CEOs across government because they wanted to better understand, where the greatest impact could be made. So they've been working very, very hard, and I thank them. I thank them for the work that they did. It's very valuable. As per their 6-month time frame, they have provided the report to me, and we will then be preparing our response to that, and then we'll publish it all together. So it will be made public once we've gone through it. I think it's fair to say that some of it is tangible things that we can do, and some of it is about reframing how we do business. So, for example, taking more of a risk-based analysis approach rather than a blanket approach to everything. So they're things that we have to work through. We haven't adopted any particular recommendation or point. Some of it is interesting in terms of like how we could do things better. But I really thank all of them for doing that work. I think they all really got stuck into it, and it goes to, I think it was the opposition leader's earlier question around the 50% reducing approval timeframes by 50%. This is all work that's going to go in and contribute to that overall aspirational target to reduce those timeframes across government.
Are there any further questions on 11.2? That concludes consideration of output 11.2. The committee will now consider output 11.3, Territory Regional Coordination. Are there any questions?
Yes.
Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In regards to this output, can you specifically explain what falls under Territory Regional Coordination?
Yes, so I know Mr. Leeming is dying to answer this question, so I won't steal all of his thunder, opposition leader, but basically we want to make sure, and I think Mr. Cercarelli spoke to it earlier as well, we want to make sure there's really strong connections right across the Northern Territory and that we are very much not a Darwin-centric government. And I'm often and many times on record as saying that places like the Barkly, for example, should be the epicentre of the Northern Territory. Big Rivers, where your electorate is, opposition leader, rich in many, many attributes that can help drive the Territory forward. So we want to make sure we've got that strong coordination across government, and again, making Department of Chief Minister and Cabinet a leaner agency, how we've moved out many of the components that Labor had back into their rightful home under agencies, means that we can have that really clear focus and be supporting our people out in the regions, which is what we want, that locally led ideas, decision making is an engagement on the ground is really important to us. So I might pass on to Mr. Leeming to go into a bit more detail if you would like.
Thank you, Chief Minister, and thank you, Leader of the Opposition, for the question. So the Territory Regional Coordination area drives policy leadership and reform coordination across government at the regional level. So it's a different footprint and a different scale than used to be the case of of CMNC's regional footprint. The CMNC regional footprint before the machinery of government changes did a lot of operational work. It was responsible for delivering services like Aboriginal interpreter service and other things, and community development. What we did as part of the machinery of government changes was to transfer that operational work to an operational agency in the Department of Housing, Local Government, Community Development, where it sits sits better with their set of operational functions at regional level, leaving our regional footprint in Chief Minister and Cabinet to really be that strategic coordination, that policy leadership, that reform coordination. And we have a significantly smaller FTE and budget footprint as a result. But it's an important part of the system in translating the territory-wide policy direction of government around the three pillars of reducing crime, rebuilding the economy and restoring the lifestyle into what that means at regional level by consulting with and engaging with local stakeholders and using the regional coordination committees to identify the big things that will make a change in those regions and drive accountability across the NT public sector and beyond for delivering on those key initiatives that will make the difference at that regional level.
Thank you, Mr. Leeming. And can you confirm that the regional coordination committees still stand, that they haven't been scrapped?
The regional coordination committees certainly still stand. Their terms of reference have been adapted to focus on the strategic coordination and driving the change rather than just information sharing. So the terms of reference have been changed to enable going beyond information sharing to making collective decisions across senior people across the NT public sector responsible for decisions in that region to identify issues, solve issues, hold each other to account for implementing them rather than just sharing information. So there have been a number of changes to the terms of reference, including to the membership of those regional coordination committees to give effect to that change, but they remain a very key part of the architecture of driving regional coordination.
Thank you. And where would you be able to find the new terms of reference? Where would they be available to find and read?
They will be available on the CMNC intranet page within government because they are a internal NTPS coordination mechanism.
But they also involve stakeholders, you said. So in terms of the stakeholders that engage in that committee, how would they know then what the references are if they've changed?
The terms of reference of the new terms of reference to the regional coordination committees clarify that the regional coordination committees themselves are only NT public servants, which is how we're able to really crash through and identify the actions. But the terms of reference also are very clear that the NT public servants in each region, coordinated through the regional coordination committee, are expected to establish bespoke mechanisms in each region to engage with the right set of regional stakeholders so that those conversations happen and so that input comes from regional stakeholders, and they're expected to do that at least once every 2 or 3 months to convene some kind of group of regional stakeholders to get that regional input, but we have left it up to each region to figure out what the best mechanism is to achieve that and to engage with those local stakeholders because the nature of each region drives quite a different set of stakeholder interactions, which means we need bespoke arrangements in each place for the regional co-ords and its members to formally and informally engage with non-government stakeholders.
Thank you, Mr. Leeming. And can you assure that the Regional Executive Director roles, which have been quite pertinent in the regional service delivery and coordination across the territory, that they have not been downgraded?
They have not been downgraded. 2 of them were recently advertised and are in the assessment process. 1 of them is currently being advertised at the same levels as they were previously, despite significantly reduced managerial responsibility. They are at the same level and are currently the majority of them are currently being advertised or being assessed.
Thank you. Chief Minister, there's a significant cut in funding under this output. On page 15 of BP3, it largely says it states that it relates to the Go Futures. Have you cut funding to the Go Futures transition process?
So Go Futures had some time-limited funding, which has now come to its end. And so we will continue with that work. Obviously, it remains considerable and important work, but that will be funded from within. And then there was some decrease in Commonwealth funding due to the movement of the Aboriginal Interpreter Services to its new home agency and some transfer of funding to the Department of Health.
Can I ask a follow-on question from that? This is from the member for Mooka. So as noted, this output's been reduced by several $1 million, and the notes indicate that that's due to the funding profile for Go Futures. I'm very concerned about the Go Futures reference group because it should be comprised of all the clan groups of the Go Peninsula. But right now, many clan groups and traditional owners for the region are not part of the discussions and decision-making about the future of Yolngu country. I have raised this issue with the Department of Chief Minister in 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙬𝙍 previously. My concern is that less money will reduce the capacity to bring in all the Yolngu groups to be part of the decision-making about the future of Yolngu country and future business developments. Can you explain what is going on here with the funding and with the inclusion of all clan groups that are part of the Gove Peninsula?
Yeah, so the funding, thank you, Member for Mulca, via the Member for Johnson for your question. So there was that time-limited funding, so the work will continue and will be funded from within. That funding expired. And then the Go Futures reference group, there's been no change to that, so it's continuing as it was under the previous government.
Thank you. Through the chair. Chief Minister, just for the record, is your government still committed to Go Futures in the transition?
Yeah, we certainly are very alive to the fact that the mine, you know, is looking to close in the outer years, and so what is going to happen moving forward is really important. A lot of work was done by the previous government in that space, and we've continued that work as it was.
Thank you, Chief Minister. And in terms of Gove and the East Arnhem Peninsula, is there an economic vision from the CLP government around this, and particularly feeding into the transition work, and what would that be?
So what we've done is really make sure that we continue the engagement with 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙬𝙍𝙎 and 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙬𝙬 and others out there who started that work under the previous government, because obviously it needs to be a vision for the region from the people of that region. And so what does those next steps look like? I've not had the opportunity to head out there yet, but that work has just been continuing since coming to government.
Thank you. So does that mean you haven't been to 𝙍𝙀𝙍𝙬 in the 10 months of being as Chief Minister?
That is correct.
Okay, I'm sure they will look forward to a visit from you, Chief Minister. Will there be a specific part of the budget that is purely for Go Futures? You said around the time limit and the change and the decrease. Will there be, through your government, that commitment in the budget? I know you said from within, but what does that look like as a Go Futures package?
Well, the Go Futures package under the previous government ended. As per many things, there was no future funding allocated for it outside of the last budget cycle, which means there are many areas across government that faced cliff funding because your government didn't put the funding in the budget, presumably to try and stop yourselves from hitting your fake debt ceiling, which we've had to abolish. So again, I think I answered in an earlier question today, you know, when you're left with a $10+ billion debt and a flailing economy, it's very difficult to fund things at the levels that you might like to. But what we know is that funding has ended, and the Go Futures work will continue, and it will have to continue under the existing funding arrangements with the Department of Chief Minister and Cabinet.
So just to put all that in plain, simple English, there will be no specific Go Futures funding under your government?
No, well, that's not correct. It's funded through the Department of Chief Minister and Cabinet. They won't be given a time-limited cliff funding like you gave them.
So nothing specifically around futures. Thank you.
Well,
Can I just follow up on my previous question through the chair?
yes.
Just to clarify part of that question, which I kind of perhaps missed highlighting is that the concern is that right now many clan groups and TOs for the region are not part of the discussion and decision making. I heard you mention 2 clan groups. Now I understand there's 13. I'm interested, speaking on, on behalf of this question, I'm interested in how you're going to make sure there's inclusion of all clan groups that are part of the Gove Peninsula.
I think what I'm just highlighting is we haven't changed how that work is happening. I'm not aware of exactly who is on it or who's done what before or who's going to do what going forward. I think that's all will unfold as things progress. I'm just merely making the point that there's been no change to that reference group. Now, if the member for Mulca believes there should be other people on the reference group, then he's more than welcome to put that forward.
And I do note that in his question he said he's raised this issue with the Department of Chief Minister in Nhulunbuy previously. So I believe it is an active question.
Great.
Okay. Are there any further questions on output 11.3?
Just one more, Mr Chair. Chief Minister, in regards to the redevelopment of 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙑𝘼𝙍, is there a specific budget for this under your government?
Yep, that's now with Housing, Local Government and Community Development, so you can ask Minister Edgington. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions for output 11.3? The committee will now move to output group 12, Office of the Territory Coordinator, output 12.1, Office of the Territory Coordinator. Are there any questions?
Just before we ask, we just have a slight...
Yeah, we'll just break for 30 seconds to allow this move over. And if anyone... Does anyone... Are there any questions?
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Mr Chair. I'll just introduce Stuart Knowles, the Territory Coordinator, has joined us as well.
Thank you, Chief Minister. And are there any questions? Leader for the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Chief Minister and Territory Coordinator, how many staff sit in this office?
Yep, 16.9 FTE.
Thank you. And what are their roles comprised of?
The work that the office is doing, or?
Yeah, so example, do you have communications, engagement officers? Do you have a manager, general manager, et cetera, et cetera?
I'll just pass on to Mr Knowles.
Thanks, Leader of the Opposition. The team comprises of the Territory Coordinator. There's a General Manager of the Office of the Territory Coordinator and the team that sits underneath the General Manager to the 16.9 FTE. We don't have a dedicated allocated comms resource within the team. The team is focused on delivering the functions of the Territory Coordinator Act.
Thank you, Mr Knowles. And would that include project officers, admin officers? Is there a mix of those type of positions?
Yeah, go for it, sir.
Yes, there is administration officers within the team, and we have different levels of seniority with project experience that are fulfilling the functions of the Territory Coordinator Act.
Thank you, Mr Knowles. And do you have a organisational chart that's available to the public to see what those positions are?
So, yeah, I think our org charts are internal, but we do have 16.9 FTE made up of a range, as the Territory Coordinator said, right from the Territory Coordinator right through to administrative support.
Thank you. Just providing a bit of background, the reasons for the question is around just what the staff makeup is essentially. So Territory Coordinator, General Manager, and then Senior Project Managers, plural, I assume, and then administrative officers. I'm just trying to get an idea of what makes up the 16.9 FTE.
Yes, Leader of the Opposition, that is correct. There is some resources allocated within the team as well, which are carrying out some functions around energy security within the Northern Territory.
Thank you, that's helpful, Mr Knowles. And how many project works in your office, Mr Knowles, that are currently investigating the possible designation of a significant project or program of works?
Sorry, how many people are working on those?
No, how many projects of works are currently afoot in the Territory Coordinator Office?
Thanks, Leader of the Opposition. As of today, there has been no designation of any significant projects or territory development areas or programs of work. The focus right now is on absolutely identifying those potential designations when we're in a position to add value to those investments and to grow the economy. But as of today, there's no designations.
Thank you. That leads to some of my other questions, but just want to put them on the record through the Chair. Chief Minister, are there any territory development areas that have been declared?
No, so just reaffirming what Mr Knowles has said, none of the three have been finalised yet. The team are really working hard to pull together all of the structures and regulatory frameworks of the legislation and, of course, doing all of their important investigations. I might just remind everyone that we always really wanted this to be a way to empower the public service to be doing their important work as well. So whilst the Territory Coordinator has a range of powers, if there were to be, a territory development area, for example, we really want to see agencies taking ownership of their decision-making processes and whatever projects they might be working on. And so their work is continuing, but we're also seeing really great engagement from the other agencies that are doing their important work.
Thank you, Chief Minister. And last question that I have is, has the Territory Coordinator used or issued any step-in notices to date?
Thanks, Leader of the Opposition. No. I guess just to round that out, to date, the Territory Coordinator hasn't used any of those powers officially.
Member for Nightcliff.
Thank you. And this sort of follows on from that. So just to clarify, does that mean that the Territory Coordinator has not issued, or the office hasn't issued, any ministerial notices under the Territory Coordinator Act?
Correct.
Okay. So if once they are, will ministerial notices under the Act be published on the website? And if so, how soon after signing a ministerial notice will it be published there?
Yeah, thanks, Member for Nightcliff. So there is robust transparency and reporting requirements within the Territory Coordinator Act, and notices and requests that are directed by the Coordinator will be published and they'll be publicly available. There's also reporting requirements whereby the Minister for the Territory Coordinator will be tabling reports in Parliament. And in addition to that, the Territory Coordinator must maintain a register of all of these notices and requests as well, which is also publicly available. The time frame for making the report tabled in Parliament is the next sitting day, and for it to be publicly available is within 5 days after the decision.
Thank you very much. The next question through the Chair is probably to the Chief Minister, just in regards to the submissions. Out of over 300 submissions to the government regarding the Territory Coordinator Bill, only 2 were in favour of it. So the vast majority of submissions disagreed that the bill was in the public's best interests. In what ways were these submissions in opposition to the bill considered by the government?
Yeah, thank you, Member for Nightcliff. There was a really extensive consultation process and period for the Territory Coordinator legislation. Not only was it an election commitment of the CLP at the 2020 election, it was again at 2024. We had the consultation paper that we released, I think it was in early October. Then, of course, that was then released publicly. We then undertook the entire process with the bill and then had the scrutiny committee. So it was about 4 months of public engagement on this. What we weren't, it was a policy decision of our government that we took to the election. So we weren't asking people the question, do you like the Territory Coordinator? Do you want one? That's not the question we asked. We're doing it. The question really was, have we hit the right points to make it effective? So part of that work was going around the country, looking at other like models and making sure that ours was a step ahead, a step above, sharper, stronger, better, so that we could have that competitive edge, because that's what we're looking for when we go back to our 2025-2028 Rebuilding the Economy strategy, that number one about making the Territory the best place to do business. And so Territory Coordinator is part of that. So there were consultation opportunities in writing. There were a number of public forums that were held, all sorts of ways for people to get involved. And, there are plenty of people who would love to see the legislation never have got through the parliament, including yourself, Member for Nightcliff, but that wasn't the proposition that we were putting to the community. Territorians elected us on this platform, and so we were delivering it. It was really a question of how can we make this the best piece of legislation that drives the best possible economic outcomes for Territorians.
Okay, thank you. Nonetheless, so the overwhelming, 99 point whatever that is, over 300, only 2 were in favour. What is the point of public consultations if the government is unwilling to take on board the public's feedback in those that were opposed?
Well, I think I've answered that question, and also you misunderstand the process. I think there was about 559 written submissions received, 89 stakeholder meetings, 6 community information sessions. So plenty of people wanted to become directly involved with it, but there were many, many more people who just wanted us to get on with the job. Now, the people who are engaged or interested in the process got involved with the process. Everyone else was just going on with their lives and expecting us as the government to get on with the job that they put us in the seat to deliver on. Okay, so I stand by the consultation. It is very important. Not everyone gets the outcome that they want in their submission, but that doesn't make the process not important. And it gave everyone an opportunity to have their say and be heard. It gave a lot of public ventilation of the different issues around it, and ultimately a strengthening of the Act. We ended up I remember there were a couple of changes that were made that made it better, and that came out of the consultation, which is a really good thing.
Can I continue?
Yes. Yep.
Thank you. Just around some questions regarding the appointment of Mr Knowles. The government has indicated that a formal assessment process was undertaken as part of that recruitment. What did this process consist of?
Yep, I'll pass you on to Mr Cercarelli.
Thank you, Member for Nightcliff, and on behalf of the Chief Minister. An advisory group was established of members of the public service who undertook a review of Mr Knowles against the Act and the requirements within the Act, and that was provided in relation to his appointment, and part of that consideration was just meeting the requirements of the Act.
Okay. And how many other candidates were part of this process?
None. So I appointed Mr Knowles as the interim territory coordinator in November last year. He's overseen and supported that entire consultation process. Obviously, the legislation then passed, and it was important to do another process whereby, to ensure that Mr Knowles met the compliance within the Act and the suitability for the role, which of course has taken place. And so then that has been authorised by the administrator and gazetted.
Okay, thank you. So during that process, was at any point the committee aware of Mr Knowles that Mr Knowles was previously investigated by NT Animal Welfare for animal neglect?
No, I've already answered that question. No, I certainly wasn't aware. I don't think I'll let Mr Cercarelli answer that.
No, the committee was not aware.
However, there's been much public commentary on this. Mr Knowles has, answered all of those questions and is remorseful for what took place 10 years ago.
Thank you. And I think it's one more question, or two more, sorry. What steps have been taken to ensure that the Territory Coordinator's decision-making on mining and energy projects is not inappropriately influenced by Mr Knowles' relationships from previous roles and relationships in the industry?
So the legislation itself is very rigorous, and obviously we sat in Parliament until I think it was past 1 o'clock in the morning that day that we debated the bill. So there are many checks and balances, safeguards, publishing requirements, tabling in Parliament, depending on what triggers are pulled at what time and which powers are being used under the Act. So what we know is that we need to have a really sharp eye on economic growth and development, and that's why we created the primary principle as part of the Act. It's to give that economic development a really clear focus to make sure that we do have, as a government, a really core group of people focused on this issue. That's why it sits in Department of Chief Minister and Cabinet as well. As I've said, we've leaned out that agency to really focus on whole of government coordination and making sure that every agency is striving to achieve our targets, and so that does require a lot more cross-agency coordination because we're so focused on those three key areas and we want everyone playing their part, and equally the role of the Territory Coordinator. So as we answered the opposition leader, none of the powers have had to be used yet, and the team continue to work through what next steps looks like, and we're excited and very much looking forward to it. But again, I do have to thank all of the other agencies who have really key roles in decision-making and approvals processes. They've really stepped up and shown great leadership, and that's exactly what we want to see.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just have a follow-on question on that, and then we'll come back, Member for Nightcliff. And I'll ask this, Mr Knowles, talking about the idea of what the Chief Minister has just put forward. Have you been contacted by individuals, businesses or corporations with concerns with their interactions with government? If so, have you seen a common thread with that? And ultimately, what's your assessment of the reception departments that you've had from departments?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there's been a lot of interest by industry, by business, and by other people that are passionate about the Territory, about what the opportunity of the Territory Coordinator is. There has been an element of managing some expectations through this process because I'm getting a range of different people that have experienced different challenges and different experiences within government departments. But really the focus of the Territory Coordinator and the office is around those opportunities which are really going to make a difference economically to the Territory in terms of population growth and revenue and those sorts of things. Some of the, I think I could call it frustration, has been around that uncertainty on particularly timeframes and the approvals processes. So the response has been very welcoming of having an opportunity to provide certainty around timeframes of approvals processes and the ability to see the end of that approvals timeframe to get return on that investment coming back. But to the Chief Minister's point, the response from the government agencies has been fantastic. I don't see this working unless it's in a collaborative fashion. And I also want to, as best possible, be proactive as opposed to reactive in how we implement the Territory Coordinator Act. So where we can work together to identify those opportunities down the track and find that pathway through is really the space that we're working on.
Thank you. Member for Kramer.
Yeah.
And then I'll come back.
So this sort of follows on from the Chair's question as well. What's your actual engagement process or plan to discover what these potential projects of significance are? Are you looking for people to come to you, or do you go and market that directly? Do you go to the private sector, or do they come to you, or do government agencies feed you information, or is it a combination of everything?
Thanks, Member for Karama. It's been a mixture of all of the above. There was the entity investment territory that existed before the creation of the Office of the Territory Coordinator, did do a lot of work around investment opportunities, and I've met, I think, just about every one of those opportunities and engaged in that regard. The Department of Trade, Business and Asian Relations do investment attraction work, and I'm working closely with that agency so that when they're identifying those opportunities, they can use the Territory Coordinator as another marketable statement of the Territory's capabilities, and I'm more than happy to work with the Department and engage in that process. But also there's been quite a bit of engagement in other jurisdictions. I've been working with the Queensland Coordinator General. The South Australian Government is implementing their own version of the Coordinator General, and Western Australia as well. So when we're looking at what are the cross-border opportunities that could benefit the Territory, obviously I've got an interest in the Territory, but if there's a cross-border opportunity, we don't want to see the project get to the border and then stop because the two jurisdictions aren't aligned. So that's also providing other opportunities for engagement with investors in those jurisdictions as well.
And just in terms of the type of projects, do they seem to align with the critical industry sectors that the government is looking to progress in terms of energy, agriculture, defence, tourism, etc.?
Absolutely, Member for Karama. Yeah, so the 5 key sectors, including mining, energy, tourism, defence and agriculture. There's been conversations in each of those sectors that I've been engaged in and looking at those opportunities for sure.
And just my final question, just going back to the budget allocation, can you just maybe through the Chief Minister this one, so we went from a revised budget of 15,603 down to 6,382 for the 25-26. What's the, can we just explain why we've gone from 15 down to 6?
I'll just pass on to Mr Cercarelli.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chief Minister, and thank you for the question, Member for Karama. That is a legacy issue to do with energy security and gas. It sat in the investment territory portfolio, and as a result of the MOG, it's administrative catch-up. It will be adjusted, obviously, as you can see from the budget figures moving forward.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Can I just clarify just in relation to that, because I had a quick question about that too, noting that, and footnote point 2 describing what that happened. So just to clarify, that gas purchase came out of the Territory Coordinator budget last year but will not ongoing, is that correct?
If I may, thank you for the question, Member for Johnson. It was prior to MOG, it was budgeted in investment territory. Investment territory no longer exists. It's become the Office of the Territory Coordinator. That budget process of transitioning that funding out to a relevant area hasn't occurred, but will occur as of the 1st of July.
So purchase of gas is not part of the Territory Coordinator's remit. Okay, thank you.
Member for Nightcliff.
Thanks. I'm just going to finish off my line of questioning from earlier around recruitment of Mr Knowles. Mr Knowles was previously a Managing Director at 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙑𝘼𝙔𝙏, I think it's pronounced, advisory. 𝙍𝙀𝙇 was the public sector arm that was spun off from disgraced consultancy firm PricewaterhouseCoopers after the 2023 tax scandal, where PwC leaked sensitive tax information to clients. Despite being spun off, 𝙍𝙀𝙇 Advisory have retained many of the same partners and employees. PwC has since been banned from taking government contracts. However, 𝙍𝙀𝙇's picked up over $12 million in government work. Given the enormous taxpayer expense of this scandal, was Mr Knowles' link to that disgraced consultancy firm scrutinised during the recruitment process?
Just before, I will just mention Standing Order 233. I'll just remind everybody of the Standing Order. Exercise of speech, freedom of speech. We'll continue with the question, but please, everyone in the committee, just be mindful of when people can't respond.
I mean, whatever your thoughts are about PwC, that's a matter for you, Member for Nycliffe. What's your actual question for me?
Well, it was just around that, I guess, because that scandal had an enormous cost to the taxpayers, and that's how it's relevant to the budget, was Mr Knowles' relationship and link to the advisory into that tax firm scrutinised during the process of recruitment?
Well, no. So he worked there for a short period of time as Sky. So it has nothing to do with whatever happened prior to that.
Okay. But it was a spun off part of PwC.
Okay, as I said, whatever your thoughts are about PwC, that's a matter for you. We picked the best person for the job.
All right.
Can I ask a follow-up question there?
Sure.
Thank you. So in terms of picking the best person for the job, and you've explained the process, can you tell us who recommended Mr Knowles for the job or how you became aware of him being appropriate for that position?
Yes, Mr Knowles is well known. He sat on the Chamber of Commerce board, for example, spent a very long time at IMPEX. Prior to that was in government doing the project work. And so a number of people recommended him to me. I think he suits the role perfectly because he has walked in both of those worlds, the private and the public sector. And as Mr Knowles just said earlier in answer to another question, it's about that collaboration that's really going to make this work. So despite the fact that there is much misinformation about what the territory coordinator can or might do, and there's a lot of fear-mongering and fear campaign around the role, I think what we have in Mr Knowles is a very steady hand, and what we're already seeing across government is a really nice change in culture and that ownership that Mr Cercarelli is driving as well. That ownership and decision making by the public service is great, and so Territory Coordinator stands ready to do what is required in terms of territory development areas and significant projects, but also a lot of those powers would only come in if the agencies weren't doing what they needed to be doing. And what we can see is that agencies are doing what they need to be doing.
Thank you. So sounds like there was a broad range of people that you say recommended. I just have one other question, which is where you said that you'd drawn on the kind of rigorous legislation in terms of the appointment. And I note that in the draft bill, Section 79 referred to criteria for eligibility for appointment. That was then removed. Can you explain why?
So in the original version, it was drafted a bit more like what you might see for an integrity commissioner type function. And so as a result of the consultation, and when we looked around the country then, Mr Knowles mentioned, WA, South Australia are fairly advanced with theirs. Queensland have obviously had theirs for a very long time. That was not reflected to that degree anywhere else. So that was then put out and able to be consulted on it and part of that full, transparent, open consultation process.
Okay, so the removal of, for example, made a reportable donation to a political party or an associated entity of a political party, and I'm asking this because it's an issue of concern that people have raised with me in terms of, you said integrity. Obviously, this is also a position of integrity, I would imagine.
But it's not an integrity function.
I do understand the difference, thank you, Chief Minister, but it's a position which people are looking to hold with integrity. So that, just to note, that's been removed. You've given your rationale for why. Thank you.
Yes.
Just a brief one. Will the Territory Coordinator's Office rule out any outsourcing to private consultancies? Or can you?
It's a bit hypothetical.
No.
Chief, if you're happy to answer it.
Well, no, we can't rule that out.
Yeah.
Can't rule it. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Are there any further questions on output 12.1? That concludes consideration of output group 12. We'll now proceed to output group 13, government support. Output 13.1, support to ministers and leader of the opposition. We'll just allow Mr Knowles to depart. Are there any questions? Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Chief Minister, can you please provide a full breakdown of ministerial staff salaries by classification level, including how many staff are employed at each level and their total cost to the Northern Territory?
I think that's all part of the written questions you received yesterday, Opposition Leader, but I can take it on notice again if you would like.
Yeah, thank you. And just double confirming, you may have sent them at 5 p.m. yesterday, but they were not received by the Opposition Leader office, my office, until 9:15 a.m. this morning. But yes, please, if I could take it on notice, Mr Chair.
Leader of the Opposition, please restate the question for the record.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Chief Minister, can you please provide a full breakdown of ministerial staff salaries by classification level, including how many staff are employed at each level and their total cost to the Northern Territory?
Chief Minister, do you accept the question?
I do.
The question asked by the Leader of the Opposition of the Chief Minister has been allocated the number 1.15. Leader of the Opposition. Member for Karama.
Yep. Thank you, Chief Minister. Bit of a follow-up question on that one. Chief Minister, can you give me the staffing levels and costs provided to the Leader of the Opposition's office?
Not enough, I can assure you that.
I've been there. I would have to take that on notice.
Okay, can I ask it as a question on notice, please?
Member for Karama.
Unless the Opposition Leader would like to answer. Probably not. No, that's all right. No,
we'll bring it back. Member for Karama, please restate the question for the record.
Can you please provide the staffing and costs provided to the Leader of the Opposition's office?
Chief Minister, do you accept the question?
I accept the question.
The question asked by the member for Karama of the Chief Minister has been allocated the number 1.16. Member for Karama.
No further questions.
Just a brief question, Chief Minister. Are you aware of the support that's provided to crossbench members in other jurisdictions, noting that here in the Territory, it's zero?
Yes, I am aware of this legacy issue. I've been around long enough to know that crossbenchers always want plenty of resources, but what they forgot is they ran as an independent and they are therefore an independent. And I know the Legislative Assembly, I believe, offers research support and some other bits and pieces. There we go. A senior researcher and a librarian to help support you.
Thank you.
But yes, I take your point.
Just to note, I ran as a representative of the community like every other person in the chamber.
Okay, we're just gonna bring it back to direct questions.
Sorry,
please.
on that though, the research has not been, the position has been vacant. So we haven't actually.
Department of Legislative Assembly are on, I think, at the end of the fortnight. So yeah, ask them as many questions as you like. Yep.
Okay. Are there any further questions on output 13.1? That concludes consideration of output 13.1. The committee will now consider output 13.2, support of the administrator. Are there any questions? That concludes consideration of output 13.2. We'll now take questions on output 13.3, government services. Are there any questions? That concludes consideration of output 13.3 and output group 13. I note that output group 14, Office of the Commissioner for Public Employment, is the responsibility of the Minister for Public Service, and questions relating to this output group will be considered when Minister Hersey appears before the committee next Monday, 16th of June 25. The committee will now proceed to output group 15, corporate and shared services, output 15.1. Corporate and governance. Are there any questions? That concludes the consideration of output 15.1. I'll now call for questions relating to output 15.2, shared services received. Are there any questions? That concludes the consideration of 15.2. The committee will now consider output 15.3, shared services provided. Are there any questions? That concludes consideration of output 15.3 and output group 15. This concludes consideration of all outputs relating to the Department of Chief Minister and Cabinet. On behalf of the committee, I'd like to thank the departmental officers for attending today. The committee will now proceed to consider outputs relating to the Northern Territory Police Force. Chief Minister.
Thank you very much. I just want to thank all of the officials who are up with me today, but of course all of the people who've been working very, very hard to prepare all of the material that's required. It's been a real privilege and an honour to work with the DCM team, and I'm certainly looking forward to the future. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chief Minister. The committee will break for 7 minutes and we will re-adjourn at 2:55 p.m.